If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
When people preserve, and we've talked about this on the program several different times, there's a number of ways in which you can preserve your harvest. You can, we'll talk about that in the second segment. You can just eat it as it is. You can freeze it.
You can even keep some things in the refrigerator for a while, too.
You can ferment it as
ferment
well.
as well.
So one of the things that we're going to talk about is dehydration of food. This is a great way in which you can preserve it for literally years to a certain degree if it's kept in a proper area, environment. The dehydration, okay? First of all, let's talk about what, we bring this up. Nesco is a sponsor of our garden talks. You've been with us at our library talks and other locations. Nesco, the dehydrating and slow cooking company, they sponsor the talk. So we're going to bring up they've got great dehydrators, and you can get any type of dehydrator. What is best to dehydrate your food with is a dehydrator that has a fan that pushes the air through the material. There are different dehydrators in which there's a heating coil at the bottom, and we're not asking you to go buy something from Nesco. I'm just explaining to you what the best unit, if you're going to go buy one, is. There's heating units or coils in the bottom of these units that the heat gradually rises up with no force of fans whatsoever. I have found from personal experience those do not work very good at all. You want that force of warm or hot air blowing through the trays, through the food, to dehydrate it in an even fashion, in a timely fashion. That's the best dehydrator that we have found that works. There's 5 mistakes that people make when dehydrating. You know, you would think, oh, okay, I'm just going to take some tomatoes or peppers, wherever, throw in the dehydrator, and 12 hours later I'm going to have dehydrated peppers or sun-dried tomatoes. That's not really always the case.
Right. So one thing you want to keep in mind is that you don't want to over or under dehydrate. So you kind of have to watch it. There's lots of recipes online, all that information.
They come with a guideline.
And they do come with a guideline.
And a temperature gauge on most of these units between 90 and 145, 160 degrees. And it says approximate for approximate time. This is not, science. Based on food, all has different water consistencies.
And that's the biggest thing, is that you don't want to under-dehydrate, because if you under-dehydrate, then when you store it, it could possibly mold, it could just mushy, something like that.
Right. It's still having that water consistency, that percentage of moisture that, again, will mold, and then you've wasted the time of energy.
Right. So there's that, and then over-dehydrating, you're just going to
turn into a leaf.
Pretty much, like, it's not going to be tasty, I think, or it's going to be very brittle.
There's like a 6 to 8% moisture content that you want in these. You want them to be, not bone dry, leaf fall dry. You want it to have some consistency, a little moisture that holds on to that's in the item. And the reason why we dehydrate, what is occurring, Holly, whenever we dehydrate, let's say, basil or thyme or tomatoes or peppers? What is really occurring?
Sure. So
what's being removed and what is staying?
The liquid the moisture of the food or whatever is being removed, and the main properties of that are staying.
The flavors are staying. The oils are staying.
Right. The beneficial parts.
So essentially, when you dehydrate something, basil is a good example, or herbs, you're removing the moisture content, the water, but you're leaving the properties and the oils and the flavors, which actually intensifies the flavor of that particular item in which you're dehydrating.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that allows you to get, tomatoes. We did sun-dried tomatoes. That's what we call them. That's what is called in the industry. But you put them in a dehydrator, and we find that it really eliminates almost totally the acidity that you're used to when you eat a red tomato.
And they get really sweet. They're very sweet. It's almost like
candy. It's tomato candy is essentially what it is. Mm-hmm. Obviously, not everybody likes that flavor. Now, they work phenomenal if you're making noodles. Throw them in right at the end. They get a little soft, a little chewy, but they add that sweetness that you're not. It's a totally. I don't want to say it's a totally different property, but it's a totally different taste. You wouldn't expect that on a dehydrated tomato to have that type of flavor. You're used to that acidity, that little bitterness. Opposite when it comes to the dehydration of the tomatoes.
Definitely.
So, over or under. Big difference. You got to pay attention. This is not a put in, walk away, come back type of thing. There's some finessing that you have to understand with a particular machine, the environment in which you are in, your house, the dryness or the dampness of the air. So that's one.
And then you want to make sure you're paying attention to the thickness. And then that's...
Well, just like when you're doing any type of cooking, if the consistency is the same, it will all cook at the same rate. You don't have stuff overcooked or undercooked if you're cooking potatoes or whatever.
Right.
The case. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one. That's another one. The temperature. So again, it's going to come with a guideline, but you can also find many resources online, books, all sorts of good information. But the temperature is key because if you dehydrate it at too high of a temperature, too low, depending on what it is, it might not dehydrate properly. Too fast, too slow. So that's why you want to make sure you're doing the right temperature.
And people will ask us, can I take my seeds, my onion seeds, my bean seeds, my tomato seeds, and dehydrate them to get them to dry out so I can store them? The safe answer is no, because if you dehydrate your seeds, let's say you got a whole bunch of bush bean seeds that you're trying to dry out to store. If you dehydrate them at too high of a temperature, you will destroy the germination inside of the seed, and then you have it's not good. Your best option when drying seeds, put it on a plate in an indirect area in the corner where it doesn't get direct sunlight. Let it dry naturally for 2 or 3 weeks. Then you know the properties and the germination is as good as it possibly can be, just like it would be drying on the vine outdoors. Don't put it in a heat environment like a dehydrator. It's not going to be good.
Right. So that's another one. You want to taste test your recipe before dehydrating. I think that's important because, for one, you're going to spend the time and energy to dehydrate.
How do you do this? Like, if you're making a consistency like homemade fruit roll-up, you can taste that liquid.
Yeah, or like some people I made dehydrator cookies once, so I tasted the recipe before. It was like a soaked oats type thing. People do that. They make like dehydrated crackers, things like that. So you want to make sure that when you taste it, it's not going to be too salty or too sweet or something like that.
And like we talked with a couple of weeks ago, making small batch canning, do a small batch dehydrating.
You could definitely do that. Or do several. If you have something that can go in at the same time, you can try smaller recipes.
Right. These dehydrators, the Nesco, you start out with 4 trays. You can expand to 30 trays. That's a lot of material in which you are preserving. And if you go 30 trays of something and you find out later you don't really like that, you're throwing that away or you're having to find somebody to give it to. So do a small batch and then go from there.
Then we also have, you want to make sure you're storing it properly.
So explain that. What is proper storage of a dehydrated item?
Sure. So a lot of people will think, okay, I dehydrate all this, I can just put it in a zip top bag and it'll be fine. And that's not the case because zip top bags are not completely, they can kind of sit, get mushed down, things like that. So
there's no structure
to that. Right. So what you can do...
Okay, so it's not so much that it will go bad in a Ziploc bag. It's the storage properties that, crushed and now you've got a bunch of crumbs? Or is that a little bit of both?
Kind of both.
Okay.
So then what you want to do is do something like glass jars. You can use like old mayonnaise jars or whatever, peanut butter jars, as long as they're glass.
Glass, okay.
And then, or you could do, like we do, half-gallon mason jars.
And these work great for ones that's got cracks, chips that you cannot safely can in. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could do like quart jars or whatever. And then you just want to make sure the lid is on tight. Some people will do like a vacuum seal on them as well. So it kind of is
And you can do decorative jars or as long as that lid is sealed properly. Now, there are some things in which, we dehydrated last year for the very first time. We tried leaf lettuce.
That was weird.
But it was different, but it worked.
Why did we do leaf lettuce?
Well, I was going to see if we could do it for add a flavor to soups or stews or something. I just was experimenting on that procedure. Leeks. People in the United States were trained to eat the lower bleached or white portion of the leek. Most any other country you go to, they eat the whole leek. The whole leek is edible. So the green portions we chop up and dehydrate. You can also just put it right in your stir-fry, soup, stew, whatever, or eat it just as is. Tomatoes we talked about. We did cucumbers. And the yard-long cucumbers, which M.I. Gardner sells and we're growing, when dehydrating, they are very close to a melon taste consistency. They get 36 inches long. And when dehydrated, they almost taste like sweet candy that you would get from the fair. Very, very unique. We have dried dehydrated okra. Takes the greasiness out of the okra.
I still don't like it.
You can also, with cucumbers, we've dehydrated just normal pickling cucumbers, and sprinkle a little dill weed on it. So you basically have a dehydrated pickle.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does taste good, though.
And you can dehydrate the cucumbers and put it in water and infuse your water with...
maybe not the dill ones.
Not the dill ones,
not
the plain ones.
The plain ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you like dill water.
So dehydrating is a great way. It's a small investment to preserve a lot of food very easily, and then all you have to do is rehydrate. And you can do trail mixes, you can do fruit roll-ups, you can do all of this stuff on a very cheap scale, but on a more healthier level than what you would buy in the store.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.